Hey, what's up? Welcome back to another quick Flutter tutorial. In this one, I'm going to show you how to code this sushi shop restaurant app. I found this design on Dribble and I thought it looked pretty good, so I'll link it below. And for this one, let's start on with the intro screen and then let's slowly build on from this and make it more functional. By the way, if you're a beginner trying to get into app development, I wrote a little handbook for people like you who have no coding experience at all. I designed the book with a complete beginner in mind, so the book starts off with the basics of programming and then I show you all of the essential widgets and concepts for you to start building apps yourself. This is a book that I really wish I had when I first started Flutter, so yeah, I hope this helps the beginners out there. I'll have it linked below. So I've opened up a brand new Flutter project, and just to keep everyone on the same page, in my main function I'm running my app, which brings us to this intro page, and I've got this organized in a folder called pages, and this one just gives a blank scaffold, so you should just have a blank white app like this. Now the first thing to do is I'm going to bring in some images that we want to use. So I have this folder called images. So if you want to know a good place to get some icons and images like this, I highly recommend flaticon.com. And so here you can just search whatever. So I'm just going to search sushi and you can get whatever you want. So yep, have a look at this website. And so I've prepared my 4 little images I'm going to use for this app. And so once you've got the images ready, let's open up your library and just drag your images folder in. So if you come back to the code, we have to tell it that we're going to import some images. So go to your pubspec.yaml and you can see down here, let's uncomment this assets and just specify the folder where you placed it. So let's save that. And just while we're on this pubspec.yaml, let's also come up to the dependencies and I'm just going to add in a Google font package. So this will give us access to some cool fonts later on. So save it. And once that's done, let's close this file and let's start building it out. So for the background color, it's kind of like some type of red maroon type of color. So I'm just going to pick what I think looks good. And for the body of the scaffold, it's just going to be an overall column. And I always like to have a bit of a plan. So the first thing is the shop name, and then we're going to have a image like an icon. Then we're going to have the title, subtitle, and also just a button at the bottom. So let's start building this out. Now if I type sushi man as the text, you can see it's scrunched up in the corner. So I'm just going to put in a sized box. You can also use something called a safe area widget, but for this one I'm just going to use a sized box and some padding. Cool. And for the font here, if you look at the style, I want to start typing Google fonts and then you can import that package. And the font I already found was this one. So DM Serif Display. And so if I just restart this, you can see there it is. It's kind of a cool font, but it's going to need to be much bigger. And also let's make it white. Great. Now let's use another size box just to space this out a little. And beneath that, let's have our image. So you can just bring in whatever image you want. I want to use this eggs one. Cool. And let's just add some padding again just to bring it more in the middle. And if you look at this overall column, everything's kind of aligning to the middle. So I'm going to change this cross-axis alignment to the start. So all of our children is going to align to the left. Great. So let's just continue going. Now we want to have the main title here, which is the taste of Japanese food. So let's just grab that Google font again, but maybe make it a bit bigger. That's looking pretty good. And this size box, I'm just going to make it a height of 10 because I want to put a subtitle underneath this. And we're going to just use a normal font for this one. And because it's a subtitle, I'm not going to make it completely white. I want to make it kind of gray. And the last thing is the line height, tightly packed together. Let's just make the height maybe 2. All right, that's looking pretty good. So let's do one more size box. And the last thing we need is a button. So for this one, I'm going to create another folder called components. And let's just create our button here because I probably want to use this button later on in the app as well. So this stateless widget we'll just call my button. And so if you think about what we want to vary between button to button, it's going to be, first of all, just the text, right? So let's just require that as a parameter. Now the color of this button, I'm just going to grab that background color we had from before, and let's just change it up a little bit, make it a little bit more lighter. Right, so let's just see how this looks so far. So let's say my button, you can see there it is. Let's just press enter. And for the text, I'm just going to say get started. Cool, so there it is. Now we have a lot of improvements to make on this button. So the first thing is the padding. There we go. And the text itself, I want it to be completely white. And now let's wrap this widget in a row because I also want to display like an icon. But we're going to have to make it white, of course. And maybe add some space between these two guys. Great. And then the last thing is I want this to be in the middle. And of course, you all know I don't like sharp corners. So let's border radius and curve this guy. Sick. And that's looking pretty good. Now, the last thing I like to do with these columns is just make the axis alignment to space evenly to kind of fill out the rest of the space appropriately. So I think that's looking pretty good so far. So we left off in the last video with this intro page. And so now we need to hit the get started button. So let's go to our button class, and I'm going to wrap this in a gesture detector. And if you look at the on tap here, it's going to require this function. So I'm just going to grab that, and we need the text for the button, but let's also require the on tap. Cool, so if you come back to our intro page, you should have a red squiggle on the button because we have to specify this on tap. So now with this, we want to go to the menu page. Now, we're going to use this navigator push to go to the new page, but we actually haven't defined any of the routes yet. So let's come back to the main.dart file, and in the routes, let's have a intro page route. And then another one for the menu page, which we haven't created yet. So let's just do that now real quick in the pages. Cool. And then if I come back to my main.dart file, let's import what we just created. And so now when we hit the button, we can give it the route name. Cool. So let's just restart this and see if this works. So if I hit get started, yeah, we go to this thing. So let's go to the menu page file now, and we can give it a scaffold. And let's start filling this out. So for the background, I don't really like having a completely white background. So let's go for like a light gray. And the app bar, let's have a menu icon on the top. And by the way, just for this particular design, I don't want to have a background color at all. So let's make it transparent. But you can still see that little shadow thing, and that's because we can set the elevation to be 0. Cool, so let's make the icon gray, and for the title, you can put whatever you want. Let's just say like Tokyo. You can put a shop name here as well if you like. Cool, so just a simple app bar. Now for the body, we're going to have a big column, and let's have a bit of a plan. So first, let's have a promo banner, and then we need a search bar, and then a menu list, and then maybe like another popular food widget. So starting with the promo banner, let's have a container, and we're going to say some little message like get 32% promo. And then let's have like a redeem button. And then also let's just have an image as well. Now for the first two items here, let's wrap them in another column. And we're going to have that button that we created before. Sweet, so there it is. Now on this overall container, let's give it the main color we had from the intro page. Now this specific color, obviously we can give it and copy and paste it to this one. But instead of doing that, it's probably a better idea to create a new folder called themes. And we're going to have another file called colors.dart. So I'm just going to save the color here. So let's call it primary color. So if you do this, then we can just say primary color. And then if we need to make any changes, we can just do it all in one place. Sweet. So let's just keep this going. Now I want some horizontal space. And the corners are really sharp. So let's make the border radius to be 20. and some padding for the inside children, and maybe some space between these two guys as well. Sweet. Now for this style, for this text, I want to use that Google font from before, and maybe make it bigger and also white. And then now finally for the image, I'm going to use one of the images we brought in earlier. So let's use this one, the mini sushi. Now it's probably really big. Yeah, so let's change the height to be say 100. Cool, and then let's just align these, maybe space between or space evenly. Ooh, not sure, what do you guys think? Maybe space between. Man, I kind of want it a little bit more in between there. So let's change up the padding. I'm just going to separate out the vertical and the horizontal padding. Okay, that's better. Sweet, so let's continue this going. Now I'm going to space this out with a height of 25. And we're going to have a search bar. So this should be a text field. So if you just save it, you can start typing it in already. But we're going to decorate it up. So I like to have an outline border. And let's put some horizontal padding as well. Now there's a lot of versions of these borders. Like you can have a focus border, which is like when the user clicks into it. And what I want to do is I want to change the color of the border though. So on the border side, let's make the color white. And the border radius, let's make it 20 as well. I want to make it round. And so what I'm going to do is just copy this outline border and just give it to the focus border as well. And I think there's one more border we can fill out, which is the enabled border. So yeah, there we go. Now I'm not sure what this very first border is for. Like if I get rid of it, yeah, nothing changed. If anyone knows what that first border is for, then let us know. But for this one, I'm just going to specify the focused border and the enabled border. Seems good enough for now. And let's continue down this column. So another size box of 25. And now let's have a food menu, which looks like it's aligning to the middle. So let's go to the overall column and make the cross-axis alignment to the start. Cool. And let's give the horizontal padding for the text. And let's make it bold. Also a bit gray, like a dark gray. And maybe make it a bit bigger. Sweet. So the next one is going to be a size box, but only a size box of 10, because we're going to display here a list of food items. Now to do this, what I'm going to do is I'm going to create another folder called models, and we're going to have a food model. So what this means is we're going to create a class and sort of have a class for what a food is going to be. Right, so each food, we're going to need the name, the price, also the image, and the rating out of 5. So when we create this, we're going to require all of these fields. And let's also just have a quick getter method to access this information from outside the class. And so if you come to the top of this menu page, cool, so we have these few items here. So for the food menu, we can now create some food. So the first one's going to be like a salmon sushi and tuna. So if you start typing food, you can hit enter and we have to fill out these fields. So I'm just going to say 21, give it the image path, and rating, let's say like 4.9. We're going to create another food called tuna. And so now that we have this menu as a list, when you come back down to our scaffold, we can now use a list view. So this will be in a expanded widget just to fill up the rest of the space. And so we're going to return a food tile, which we haven't created yet. So let's create a new component called food tile. So this is just to display in a nice format. So let's just make it real quick. Now, each food tile, we need to know what the food is, right? So let's require that. And so in the container, let's just fill out some of this decoration. So it's going to make it a light gray. And of course, I probably need to curve the corners. And in the children, we're going to have a column. So we want to display the image, the text, and also the price and the rating. So the reason why we had that food class earlier is because now we can say with any given food, we can access its image path. And let's give it a height of 140. And also we can say food.name just to get the name as a text. Cool. And lastly, we're going to need to display the price and the rating. So for this one, I'm just going to put it in a row to display the price, and also let's display the rating. And before the rating, I want to have like a star icon. Okay, so we're going to decorate this more a bit later on, but let's just see what we're doing first. So if you come back to the menu page, we can now import this food tile and just give it the food. So we're just going to cycle through the food menu, right? Like this item count, it'll just go through however long the food menu is. Yay, there it is. Now it's a vertical scroll, so let's change the scroll to a horizontal. And let's just put some padding on here. So I want to space this out appropriately. And the food tile should have some padding. So let's have a margin. Maybe just on the left. Okay, which means, sorry, coming back to the menu page, we don't need this padding. Okay, good. So in the food tile, let's have some inner children padding though. There we go. And I probably need to cross-access alignment to the start. And let's change the star to be a yellow color, which we can't really see, so let's make it like a dark yellow. Cool. And I'm just going to change the color of some of these texts just to make it look a little nicer. And the star and the rating, I'm just going to put it together, group it as a row, because then in this overall row we can space between and just separate it out like that. So this is looking pretty good. Now I'm just going to decorate up some of these texts like I said. Cool, and let's just continue this on. So after another bit of space, the last thing is I'm going to have some popular food. So this is just going to be another sort of banner style. And so in a row, let's have the image. Okay, there it is. And I'm just going to have like a favorite heart. And this one is called salmon eggs. And the price can be, say, I don't know, $21. And we're going to need to make this access to the start. And let's also give this a frame. So for the decoration, give it a light gray, give it some border radius. Okay, and then finally just some margin and some padding. Great, that's looking pretty good. Now I think we can have some gap between here. And then finally, let's have maybe a heart icon. And we actually want the outline one. Yep, there we go. And finally, I'm just going to put all first three things here in a row, so that I can main axis alignment and space between just to push that heart to the end. So far so good. Now, oh yeah, in the text field, by the way, you can actually put a nice hint text here saying like search here, just to put something already. But it's looking pretty good so far. I think we could, in the food tile, space this out properly. Yeah, that's looking pretty good. Awesome, so we left off from this menu page in the previous one. So now what we're going to do is we want to go to this food tile and we want to be able to click on it to go to the new page. So let's wrap it in a gesture detector, and you can see here it requires this function. So I'm just going to require this one at the top. And now if you come back to the menu page, you should see a red squiggle because we have to specify the on tap. So if we tap on this food tile, what we're going to do is we want to navigate to that particular food item details page. So I'm just going to create a quick method here, and I'm going to require a parameter, which is just the index. So just which food are we looking at in the menu. And so once we know that, then we can use our navigator to go to that new page. And this one here, the food details page, we actually haven't created yet. So let's just do that now in our pages folder. And this one's just going to be a stateful widget, and let's just put in a blank scaffold for now. So we can come back here and import it. And if you come back down to the very bottom, so if I tap on this food tile, we want to navigate to the food details page, which looks like I actually made a typo here. There we go. And so you can see this index that we're passing through. This just helps us know which item we're looking at. Great. So if I test this out and I refresh this and I click on the food tile, cool, it goes to that blank scaffold. So now we can just start decorating the food details page. Now, the only bit of information I need to know here is the actual food, like which food we're looking at. So let's require that. And let's just start off with an app bar. So we're asking for a parameter here, which is the food. So let's just give it that food first. Right, so which food are we looking at? So in the menu, just give it the index. And let's just rebuild this app. Cool, so you can see here, if I click on the food tile, then yep, we go to this new page. So I actually want to make this app bar transparent. And you can see that little shadow there, so we can make the elevation 0. But now we can't see that icon. So for that, we just need to specify that foreground color. And yeah, that's just the app bar. So let's just close this. Now the main meat of this video is going to be in the body. So let's just have a bit of a plan in our column. So we just want to have a list view of the food details on the top. And at the very bottom, I want to have a little section to show the price, the quantity, and also the button to add it to our cart. So let's just start off with the list view. Now I want this to take up the majority of the space. So I'm going to use an expanded widget. And in the list view, we're just going to start off with the image and have it as a rating below, and then the food name, and then finally the description. So just starting with the image, we can say, all right, let's get the food's image path, and let's just say height of 200. And just create a little bit of space here. And for the rating, I'm going to have this as a row because I want my star next to my rating number. Right, so for the rating number again, we can say get the food and get the food's rating. So there it is, but let's just decorate it up a little bit. I think it's probably better to make it a bit gray and make it bold. And because it's so stuck to the sides, let's put a padding on the horizontal. Cool, and whoops, this should be width, not height. And let's just continue this going. So let's have another sized box for some space. And for the food name, let's just give it the name here. So I want to make this one with that Google font that we used in the previous pages. Maybe we'll make it a size of 28. And then below that, we want to have a description. So this one can just be sort of a normal font, but I'm still going to decorate it up. $18, yep, that's looking pretty good. And then finally, we want to put in a description here. So this one's just going to be a blob of text. So I'm just going to say like, okay, delicate sliced fresh salmon drapes elegantly over a pillar of perfectly, I actually got this from ChatGPT. So just have a bunch of text you can put in. I'm just going to put it as a placeholder for now. And in the style, the way I want to decorate this is, first of all, I want to make it much more gray. And the important thing is the height, the line height. Let's make it 2. Yeah, that looks better. Now finally we can come down to the bottom section. So here we want to have the container, and the color is going to be that primary color we chose as the theme of the app. Yep, we want to display the price, quantity, and also a button. So starting with the price, let's say put a $sign and just add it to the food's price. Cool, so if you save it, you can see there it is. Now we're gonna need some padding on this guy. And let's just keep this going. So the quantity, now for the quantity, I want to have a minus button, the actual count, and then the plus button on either side. So just starting off with a minus button, let's use a icon button. And a subtract symbol is gonna be probably remove. And when you press this button, we want to decrement the quantity, right? So just decrease it by 1. So let's come to the very top and create these variables and methods. So just starting with the quantity count, starting at 0, and we want to have a couple methods here to decrement and increment. Right, so just rebuild the state and just subtract 1 from the quantity count and add 1 for the increment count. Cool, so let's come back down here. Now I want to make this white. And I also kind of want to have like a circle around this. Now, for the secondary color, did we create a secondary color? No, we only have a primary color. So remember how we have this very specific color that we want to use. And so we saved it in primary color. Let's do the same thing for the button, what's the color of this button? Yep, that one. Just grab it, and then I want to save it in my colors.dart file. So I'm going to call this one a secondary color. And so now we can just say secondary color. Cool. And yeah, there it is. That's what I want. And the last thing is I'm going to make this shape into a circle. Sweet. So let's just copy this and do the same thing for the plus button. Looking good. And in the middle, we can display the quantity count now. Now I'm gonna make this, of course, white, and also maybe I'll make it bold. And let's increase the size to say 18. Cool. So the methods should work. So if you actually save this and hit the plus and minus button, you can see it goes up and down. Now, one thing you can see as an issue is because the number changes, it changes the size that it fills up, right? So you can see these buttons are sort of not being static, like they're not still, they keep moving. So one way we can avoid this issue is to wrap the text in a sized box and just give it like a fixed width, so like 40. And of course we want this in the middle, and you can see there, now the buttons will remain fixed. Cool, and finally we can come up to this overall row and let's just space this out evenly or maybe between. Okay, looking good. And finally, we have a add to cart button to fill. So we already created a button as a component in the previous ones. So let's just reuse that button. And when you tap it, we want to have an add to cart method. And also looking good now, I think we should put a sized box here. And that's looking perfect. So if you just save this, right? We coded this in a way where if you click on any food, it'll tell you, the tuna or the salmon, and we can now increment the count. And what we're going to do in the next one is to actually add it to the cart. So in the last one, we left off from this food details page, and we can control this quantity. Now, one little bug that we're going to fix is we don't want no negative quantities, right? So let's actually fix that one first. So when we decrease it, just make sure to do a quick check and only decrease it if there is quantity, like greater than 0. So yep, it should work now. Cool, so now let's try to implement the add to cart button. So the first thing we have to do is we have to set up a separate class just to handle all of our data. So if you look at our menu page, this is where we stored our menu initially. But now let's go to our models, and I'm going to create a new class here called shop. And so this is where I'm going to just copy that menu and we're going to place it in our shop class. So now we can have something called a customer's cart. And let's put underscores on these to make it private. And also the getter methods as well, okay? So we can access this information from around the code. Cool, and the two methods we need to implement here is the add to cart and also the removing from cart. Now, when we add to cart, we need to know the item, like the food item, and also the quantity. So we're going to do a quick for loop and let's just add each item in. And for the removing cart, all we need to know is which item we're going to remove. So as long as we know that food, then we can just remove it from our cart. Awesome, so now that we have this shop class set up, what we need to do is I'm going to go to my pubspec.yaml and we're going to use a package called provider, which is a very common package to use for some simple state management, which I actually just made a video on it. So if you need some explanation on this, then you can watch that video. But I can show you real quick. So what we're going to do is we're going to extend this shop class to the change notifier. And each of these methods, after we make a change, we just need to notify the listeners. And so what this means is it'll reflect the UI for the appropriate widgets that need to change. So if you come back to your main.dart file, just another quick setting up we need to do is we have to wrap our entire app in a change notifier provider. And then we give it the shop class and also just the app. Awesome. So why did we just do that? Now, if you come back to our menu page, we can now get rid of this menu and we're going to be able to now access the shop literally from anywhere in our code. So for example, right here, I can say, okay, let's get the shop and its menu. So to access it, let's just say context.read the shop. And then from there, we can get the food menu and everything else that we need. So I'm going to do the same thing just for this build method. And if you save it, nothing should have changed. Everything should be working fine. Now we wanted to come back to our cart button and fill this out, right? So this method, where is it? Here, let's fill this one out. So let's just make sure, just to save and help the code out, let's make sure we're only going to add something to the cart if there's something in the cart, meaning the quantity is greater than 0. And then we can access the shop and let's add to the cart, and probably a good idea to let the user know that everything was successful. So let's grab our shop and then you can just say shop and then add to cart and just give it the food and the quantity count. And if that went well, then let's just show a quick dialog box and just say, just a quick message saying successfully added. Cool. Now we're going to decorate this further, but let's just save it to see how this looks. And there it is. Looks pretty good. So what I'm going to do is also have another button in the actions. And this one is, I'm just going to show you a nice little UI UX trick, but I want to pop once and then pop again to go to the previous screen. So I'll just show you what this means. Now, when we say popping the screen, it's basically meaning go back. We're going to do that once. Now I'll show you what that looks like first of all. So let's say we add to cart and we get this box. And if I click the tick, we're going to pop the box and go back, right? Now, I actually want to pop it one more time to go to the previous screen, because once the user has made their decision about, this particular food item, and once you add it to the cart, it's actually a better idea to just go straight back to the menu. So yeah, that's probably a good user experience. And the other thing is you can actually click not just the tick, but you can click outside of this box as well to dismiss it, which is actually not what I want. So I want to go to this barrier dismissible and say false. Cool. And then now I'm just going to do some quick decoration, just some colors, and change all the text to white. And the button as well should be white. Now what I want to do is in the home page, let's have a icon at the top near the app bar just to go to the cart. In the actions, let's have a new cart button. So you should look for a shopping cart. Cool. Cool, now I haven't created a cart page, so let's just do that real quick. And let's just put in a blank scaffold just for now. And we should come back to our main.dart to have another route to our page. So now we can say navigator.pushNamed and then go to the cart page. Sweet. There we go, we can navigate to our new page now. Cool, now one thing is you see those colors on the app bar. Looks like we specifically manually gave them colors for individual widgets. So I'm gonna get rid of that, and instead you can see that those colors for the app bar, you can say the foreground color, you can just specify it for the entirety. So that should make our code cleaner. And now we can finally come to our cart page and start decorating it. So let's just start off with an app bar, which I want to change the color. And in the body, let's have a list view builder. Cool, and just to have a bit of a plan, so the first thing is to get the food from the cart and get the food's name and then the food's price, and then let's just return the UI as a nice list tile. Now to access our shop's information and we want to consume the data, we're going to wrap this entire scaffold in a consumer widget. And you see this value, this is how we can access all of the values in our class. So the first thing is I just want to get the individual food, right? So go to the values cart and then just the individual index. So same thing for the item count, just however long our cart is. Cool, from here it's easy. So food name, just get the food name. Same thing for the food price. And then finally we can return it as a list tile. So we can specify the title and the subtitle. So again, let's just see how this looks. If I add some to the cart and you go to the cart, yay, it looks like it's working. Cool, so now we can just do some decoration. So I want a button here to delete, remember? So let's have one for the trailing. And so, yep, there's our little bin. Now, before we code up the functionality for the removing, let's just decorate this up a tiny bit. So I'm just going to put a container around this. And for the color, I want to use my secondary color. Let's put some space around this guy as well. And I'm going to invert all of these text colors. And the name of the food, let's make it bold. And the subtitle, just for the price, I'm just going to not make it bold, but make it a little gray. So just switch it up a bit. And same thing for the delete button. Cool. And the actual entire background for this whole page, I just want to make it that primary color. And we're going to need to make the elevation here 0. Cool. So yeah, this is the look I want to go for. Except for the fact that the borders, we should make it curved. And that looks pretty sleek. Okay, so coming back to our list view, you can see I want to have a pay button on the bottom. So I'm going to wrap this list in a column. So the first section is the cart. And then below that, let's have the pay button. So we already created a button in the previous video. So I'm just going to say pay now. And for now, let's just execute nothing. And it's not building, and I know why. Anytime we have a list view inside a column, you have to put it in an expanded widget because we have to specify the size. Cool, there it is. Except for the fact that on the bottom, we're going to need some padding. And that looks pretty good. Okay, now just to finish off, let's just code up the functionality here. So for removing the cart, we need to know which food we're looking at, right? And then we can just get access to the shop. And I'm actually going to need access to the context to be able to do this. So I'm just going to require that as a parameter. Cool, so I got the shop, and then now I can just say, let's just remove it. And I think that should be good. Let's check this out. Let's restart this. Okay, so I'm going to add an item to the cart. And let's remove it. Yay, everything's working. Cool, so now we got the cart functionality to be done. So next thing we can code up is the payment page. So let's keep building this up. We've made some really good progress so far. Let me know if you have any questions about any of the code. I'm happy to help out below. But thanks for watching, and I'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace.